From Plato to Nietzsche, what would they think of TikTok, capitalism, and our politics? It's a question that might keep you up at night, or at least make for an interesting thought experiment over your morning coffee. Imagine these titans of thought, yanked from their ancient scrolls and dusty lecture halls, blinking in the neon glow of the 21st century. Would they marvel at our technological progress, our interconnected world, our ability to order a burrito to our doorstep with just a few taps on a glowing rectangle? Or would they take one look at a viral dance challenge, a political flame war on Twitter, or the sheer existential dread of choosing what to watch on Netflix and just nope out? Today, we're resurrecting 5 legendary philosophers to see who'd hit cancel on modern society the fastest. We're strapping them into a metaphorical DeLorean, cranking it up to 88 miles per hour and dropping them squarely into the here and now. We'll dive into their core ideas, the very foundations of Western thought, and then, with a healthy dose of speculative fun, imagine their unfiltered, unadulterated reactions to our wonderfully weird and occasionally terrifying modern world. Think of it as a philosophical roast, where the roastee is, well, all of us. This isn't just about pointing fingers or declaring our era a dumpster fire, though. Let's be honest, some days it feels that way. It's about using these incredible minds as a lens to reflect on our own values, our societal structures, and the digital lives we lead. Who will be the first to demand a one-way ticket back to antiquity? Or will they, perhaps, find something to admire? Probably not. But let's find out together. Grab your Socratic hemlock tails, folks. It's going to be a bumpy, thought-provoking ride. First up, let's dust off the toga for Plato, the OG philosopher king enthusiast. Now, Plato wasn't exactly a man of the people in the democratic sense. In his seminal work, The Republic, he argued that the ideal state should be ruled by superwise, rigorously educated philosopher kings, individuals who've grasped the eternal forms of truth, goodness, and beauty. Democracy for Plato was a bit like letting the passengers fly the plane, a chaotic, often disastrous affair where popular opinion, however ill-informed or emotionally driven, trumps reason and expertise. He saw it as one step away from tyranny, susceptible to smooth-talking demagogues who could sway the masses with rhetoric rather than sound policy. So imagine Plato, fresh from his academy, scrolling through Twitter or X or whatever Elon is calling it this week. He sees political discourse reduced to 280 characters, policy debates devolving into meme wars, and leaders chosen not for their profound wisdom, but for their social media savvy, or their ability to craft a catchy, if entirely misleading, soundbite. He'd probably look at the sheer volume of misinformation, the echo chambers reinforcing pre-existing biases, and the way algorithms curate our reality, and his philosophical soul would just short-circuit. This, he might proclaim, is not the reasoned deliberation of the agora. This is the shadow play on the cave wall, amplified to a global, deafening roar. His verdict on modern, social media-driven politics? Instant cancel. He'd see our obsession with popular approval and viral trends as the ultimate triumph of opinion over knowledge, the very thing he warned against. The idea that anyone with a smartphone can broadcast their views, regardless of their validity, directly influencing public sentiment and even elections, would likely send him scrambling for the nearest exit from this digital dystopia. He'd probably argue that we've mistaken the freedom to speak for the wisdom to govern, and that our elected leaders are often just the most populars, not the enlightened guardians he envisioned. He'd be booking the first chariot back to 380 BC, muttering about the forms and the regrettable decline of intellectual standards. Next, let's bring in Plato's most famous student, Aristotle. While Plato was gazing up at the world of forms, Aristotle was a bit more down-to-earth, focusing on the practicalities of living a good life, what he called eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or living well and doing well. For Aristotle, achieving eudaimonia wasn't about fleeting pleasures or external validation. It was about cultivating virtue, finding the golden mean between extremes in our character and actions. Think courage as the mean between cowardice and recklessness, or generosity between stinginess and extravagance. It's a lifelong project of ethical development, aiming for excellence in being human. Now picture Aristotle, the master of the Lyceum, attempting to understand influencer culture. He opens Instagram and sees feeds filled with meticulously curated images of perfect lives, brand endorsements for products promising instant happiness, and individuals whose primary virtue seems to be their follower count. He'd likely be perplexed, to say the least. Where is the pursuit of intellectual virtue, of moral character? He might ask, is this flourishing, or is it a sophisticated form of chasing shadows, a digital equivalent of the appetites he warned against letting rule our lives? The focus on external validation, likes, shares, comments would strike him as a profound misunderstanding of what constitutes a truly good and meaningful existence. Aristotle would probably critique the superficiality, the relentless self-promotion, and the often ethically dubious means by which online fame is achieved. He'd question the ethics of promoting products one doesn't truly believe in, or presenting a highly edited, unrealistic version of oneself to the world. The idea that one's worth or impact is measured by online metrics rather than by consistent virtuous action and contribution to the community would be anathema to his entire ethical framework. He'd likely conclude that much of influencer culture promotes a life of appearances rather than substance, a pursuit of fleeting digital accolades over the enduring satisfaction of a life lived in accordance with reason and virtue. Cancelled, with a strong recommendation for a course in Nicomachean ethics. Alright, let's leap forward a couple of millennia and summon Immanuel Kant, the meticulous metaphysician from Königsberg, a man who literally set his watch by his daily walks. Kant's ethical system, a cornerstone of modern philosophy, revolves around the concept of the categorical imperative. One formulation of this is, act only according to that maxim, whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. Essentially, before you do something, ask yourself, what if everyone did this? Would it create a world you'd actually want to live in? For Kant, morality isn't about consequences or feelings, it's about duty and universal principles derived from reason. Now let's unleash Kant onto the wild world of online discourse, specifically cancel culture and the phenomenon of digital outrage mobs. He observes a public figure misstep, or an old, ill-advised tweet resurface, followed by a torrent of public condemnation, calls for deplatforming, boycotts, and social ostracism, often happening at lightning speed without much room for nuance, context, or redemption. Kant, ever the stickler for principle, would stroke his chin and ponder. Is the maxim, publicly shame and professionally ruin anyone who transgresses current social norms, regardless of intent or context, one that we can will as a universal law? He might argue that while holding people accountable is important, the mechanisms of online cancellation often fail the universality test. If everyone engaged in instant, unforgiving judgment based on shifting social tides, would society become more just, or simply more fearful and performative? He'd also be deeply concerned about treating individuals merely as means to signal one's own virtue, means to generate clicks and engagement, or means to enforce a particular ideology, rather than as ends in themselves, as rational beings deserving of respect and due process, however flawed. The lack of clear, universally applicable rules, the emotional intensity, and the often disproportionate consequences would likely lead Kant to view much of online outrage as failing his rigorous ethical standards. He'd probably write a lengthy treatise on the critique of pure online reason, and then, very rationally, cancel the whole enterprise for its lack of universalizable maxims. Fasten your seatbelts, comrades, because Karl Marx is entering the chat, and he's probably not here to like and subscribe. Marx, the fiery prophet of communism, spent his life critiquing capitalism, arguing that it was an inherently exploitative system. He saw history as a class struggle between the bourgeoisie, the owners of the means of production, and the proletariat, the working class, who sell their labor. He believed capitalism led to alienation, and would inevitably sow the seeds of its own destruction, leading to a classless communist society. Now, imagine Marx confronting 21st century global capitalism, with its gig economies, its planned obsolescence, its relentless consumerism fueled by targeted advertising, and its staggering wealth inequality. He'd look at Amazon warehouses, where workers are monitored for every second of productivity, and see a new, digitally managed form of exploitation. He'd analyze the sharing economy and likely argue that it often disguises precarious labor as entrepreneurial freedom. The sheer volume of stuff we're encouraged to buy would confirm his darkest theories about commodity fetishism and the endless pursuit of profit over human well-being. Marx would likely be both fascinated and horrified by the internet. On one hand, he might see social media and digital platforms as powerful new tools for disseminating ideology and creating false consciousness. The way our data is harvested and monetized would be, for him, another example of surplus value extraction. On the other hand, he might also recognize its potential for organizing and resistance, a digital public sphere where critiques of capitalism can flourish and workers can unite. But ultimately, seeing the Jeff Bezoses and Elon Musks of the world, the persistent poverty alongside unimaginable wealth, he'd probably declare that the fundamental contradictions of capitalism are not only alive and well, but have simply mutated into new, more insidious forms. His verdict: the system is still rigged. Cancelled, with a call for a digital age revolution. Finally, let's welcome the philosopher with the most epic mustache and perhaps the most radical critique of conventional morality, Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche famously declared God is dead, by which he meant that traditional religious and moral frameworks had lost their power in the modern world, leading to a crisis of meaning, nihilism. He was deeply critical of what he called herd morality, or slave morality, the values of conformity, humility, and pity, which he believed stifled the potential of exceptional individuals, the Übermensch, Overman, or Superman, who could create their own values and affirm life in all its chaotic glory. So, what happens when Nietzsche, the ultimate individualist, logs onto social media? He sees a world of viral trends, challenges that demand mimicry, echo chambers where dissenting opinions are shouted down, and the relentless pressure to conform to groupthink. He'd observe the carefully curated online personas, the desperate quest for likes and validation from the herd, and he would likely recoil in philosophical horror. This, he might thunder, is the apotheosis of the herd instinct. Where is the striving, the self-overcoming, the creation of new values? Instead, he sees a digital landscape that often encourages mediocrity, conformity, and the last man, his term for the apathetic, comfort-seeking individual devoid of great aspirations. Nietzsche would probably roast the performative outrage, the virtue signaling, and the way social media can amplify the will to power in its most petty and reactive forms, rather than its creative and life-affirming potential. He'd see the endless scrolling and passive consumption of content as a flight from the difficulty of genuine self-creation. The idea that our tastes, opinions, and even our identities are being subtly shaped by algorithms designed to maximize engagement and often, by extension, conformity, would be his worst nightmare realized. He'd deliver a blistering critique of our digital conformity, urge us to become what you are beyond the confines of our profiles, and then dramatically delete his account, probably by smashing the phone with a hammer, Zarathustra style. Total, emphatic cancellation. Well, there you have it. 5 philosophical heavyweights, 5 very strong opinions on our modern mess. From Plato's disdain for our digital democracy to Aristotle's side-eye at influencer ethics, Kant's principled objection to online mobs, Marx's renewed critique of digital capitalism, and Nietzsche's epic roast of herd mentality 2.0, it seems our society might not get a passing grade from the titans of thought. It's a humbling, and frankly, pretty amusing exercise to imagine their reactions. It makes you wonder if they'd find anything to like, or if they'd just collectively decide humanity peaked with the invention of the toga, and it's all been downhill since. But beyond the hypothetical cancellations and witty takedowns, there's a genuine value in looking at our world through these ancient and not-so-ancient eyes. Their critiques, though born in different eras, still resonate because they touch upon fundamental questions about justice, virtue, reason, equality, and individuality. They force us to ask whether our incredible technological advancements have truly led to a more enlightened, more ethical, or more fulfilling human experience. Are we using our powerful new tools wisely, or are we just creating more sophisticated caves with better Wi-Fi? So, which philosopher do you think would cancel us first? Who would be the most appalled, the most disillusioned, or perhaps secretly, the most intrigued by some twisted aspect of modern life? Let us know in the comments, and remember, those who don't learn from history are doomed to be roasted by it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ponder the eternal questions, or at least ponder what Plato would think of your latest selfie.